August 1915, Gallipoli's cliffs looking all jagged and mean, sun pounding down like it's got a personal vendetta, and a couple hundred blokes from the Norfolk Regiment just march off into the mist. Poof, gone. No corpses, no dog tags, not even a sad little pile of boots. The whole thing's straight up nightmare fuel. And for over 100 years, everyone from crusty war buffs to wild-eyed conspiracy nuts has been obsessed with the same question. Where the hell did the Vanishing Battalion end up? Welcome to War Files Uncovered, the show that digs up history's weirdest, dustiest mysteries and shakes them around until something interesting falls out. If you're the sort who likes your history with a side of what the actual heck, you're gonna feel right at home. So our tale kicks off under this merciless Turkish sun, August 1915, Gallipoli. A hellhole of cliffs, dirt, and Dardanelles shimmer that looks pretty from a distance, but up close just reeks of gunpowder and rotting flesh. The Allies? Stuck in a gross, bloody stalemate with the Ottomans. Trenches everywhere, like the land itself's been hacked open and left to fester. Flies having a field day, just endless buzzing over bodies nobody dares drag back. And in the middle of all this, the 1st 5th Norfolk lads, 267 strong, give or take, are told it's their turn to move up. It's early afternoon, the kind where your shirt sticks to you in all the wrong places. The Norfolk boys are wiped, sweat, grime, rifles hanging loose. Some of them look barely old enough to shave, let alone die in a foreign ditch. They thought they'd be home by Christmas, huh? Others know better, but what choice do they have? So they march, not with any big heroics, just that grim, sinking feeling you get when you're heading into something ugly and you know it. Their target? Some ridge near Anafarta, not that any of them knew exactly where that was. Now here's where things get weird. Witnesses swear the air got spooky still. No breeze, no birds, nothing. Just this heavy, dead silence. Then, bam, fog. Not rolling in from the water, but oozing up from the ground, thick and pale and weirdly bright, like the earth itself was coughing up ghosts. Aussie troops watching from higher ground? Yeah, they'd seen gas attacks, artillery smoke, all that. But this was different. The fog looked almost solid, glowy even, just sitting in weird clumps that swallowed up whole companies. The Norfolks marched straight in, one after another, until the last helmet and the last shiny bayonet melt away into the soup. At first, nobody panics. It's war. People disappear behind ridges all the time. But then time drags on. There's gunfire in the distance, Turkish shells thumping away somewhere, but no shouts, no signals, no flares from the guys who vanished. 1 hour, 2, zip. When the fog finally pulls back, the hillside's empty, just chewed up mud and a few sad shell casings. No regiment, no wounded, nothing. Like the ground just ate them. Commanders try to play it cool. Maybe the guys chased after the retreating enemy, maybe got nabbed by the Turks, maybe scattered. War's messy, right? But by nightfall, nobody's come back, not a single soul. 267 men walked into that fog and not one ever came out. Yeah, tell me that doesn't give you chills. Man, the whole Norfolk thing just lingers. Like, you know that dull ache after you whack your shin on the coffee table? That's the kind of bruise it left on military memory. Back home, families got these cold, useless scraps of paper. Missing in action, nothing more. Moms clung to this desperate hope, thinking, maybe he's in some Turkish camp, still breathing. Wives, no way they'd accept that their husbands just blinked out of existence. But there weren't any letters, no lists from the Red Cross, no prisoner swaps with their names scribbled anywhere. Nada. Fast forward to 1918, war's over. Everybody's picking up the pieces. They send in these graves teams to Gallipoli, hunting for bodies. And yeah, they found plenty. British, Aussies, Turks, scattered and buried all over like grim confetti. But the Norfolk lot practically vanished. Just a few bodies showed up, torched and twisted near some Turkish farmhouse. Less than 20 men they could even name. The rest? Just gone. Like a magician's trick, but way more horrifying. Then randomly in 67, some Kiwi vets pop up and start talking. Sworn statements and everything. They swear up and down they watched the whole thing go down. This freaky fog rolling in, the Norfolk men marching straight into it. And then, poof, the mist lifts and floats off like some weird, solid jellyfish into the sky. Against the wind, mind you. Seriously? It's either the wildest war story ever or someone spiked the rations. So what actually happened? Were they just messing with people? Memories all scrambled after 50 years? Or was it something more? Historians still argue about it, bickering like old relatives at Christmas. Some call it pure myth, fog of war stuff, literally. Others say, no, it was a massacre. Ottomans covered it up. But the floating fog? Nobody's explained that bit. And that's how the whole Vanishing Battalion legend took off. Half ghost story, half unsolved crime. Soldiers whisper it over pints, pass it on like a quiet secret. Did the Ottomans wipe them out and bury the evidence? Did the earth swallow them? Or did something way stranger snag them, like aliens or who even knows? Even now, more than 100 years later, nobody's got a real answer. How does a whole battalion just vanish? No bodies, no graves, nothing but wild stories and a bunch of families still wondering. Weird, right? Yeah, so the morning after the Norfolks vanished, picture the world after a hurricane's blown through, except it's just dead quiet, not even birds, just this weird twitchy silence that almost hurts your ears. Every now and then, some machine gun chatters off in the hills, but mostly there's nothing. The commanders are up there, squinting at the battered slope where the battalion charged the day before. The grass is flat, the dirt's ripped up, but where the hell are the men? Gone. Fog's lifted too, like it was never there. Just empty air and the kind of absence that feels heavy. Nobody wants to admit what they're seeing, honestly. The officers figure, maybe the guys pushed further, dug in somewhere out of sight. So they send scouts out, boots crunching on rocks, eyes flicking all over like they expect a sniper behind every boulder. They're half hoping to catch a whisper, maybe find some muddy trench with the missing guys smoking and waiting for orders. Nope, just more nothing. And then the hours just drag, days even. Reports keep coming in and they're all the same. No camps, no wounded, no gear left behind. It's like the whole battalion just blinked out of existence. Poof. Word gets around the trenches because soldiers gossip like old ladies. Some swear the Ottomans jumped them, killed everyone, and buried them where nobody had ever looked. Others say the Turks burned the bodies, no trace left but a smear of ash. But then the weirder stories start. Guys who saw the fog swear it wasn't normal. Too thick, moving the wrong way, eating sound and light. The ones who watch their friends walk into it say their guts twisted up, like some animal instinct telling them, "Don't go in there, man." Like the fog itself was hungry. The brass obviously doesn't want this crap getting out. Gallipoli's already a nightmare. Losing a whole battalion is just more embarrassment. So the official dispatches go back to London all sanitized. Heavy engagement, presumed captured, outcome uncertain. The families back in Norfolk, they get the soul-crushing telegram, missing in action, end of story. Only nobody at home buys it. Moms start firing off angry letters, wives beg for news. But all they get is the same cold wall. Nothing to tell you, sorry. And every time the silence drags on, the rumors get wilder. The first real clue doesn't even show up till years after the war. In 1919, some unlucky guys are out scouring Suvla Bay for remains and stumble on a burned-out farmhouse. There they finally find some bodies, a handful really, not even close to the whole battalion. Still got their Norfolk badges, but the bodies are a mess. Some flat out on the ground, others stacked up weirdly, bones black as charcoal. Someone clearly torched them hard. And of course, that just makes things worse. Who did it? Why? If they were prisoners, why not record them? If they died fighting, what's with the bonfire? People argue, maybe the Turks did it while retreating. Or if you listen to the tinfoil hat brigade, maybe someone burned them to hide something even stranger. Something the war can't explain. Most of the Norfolks, though, never found. No boots, no rifles, nothing. Like the fog was some doorway, and the guys just stepped through into somewhere you don't come back from. Creepy as hell. So 1967 rolls around, decades after Gallipoli, right? Out of nowhere, some old-timers from the New Zealand Expeditionary Force decide it's time to talk. These guys swear up and down they had front-row seats up on the high ground, eyes glued to the whole mess unfolding below. And what they spill? Wild stuff. Here's what they say. The Norfolk boys head into this fog, except, surprise, it's not your regular garden variety fog. Nope, this is some weird glowing cloud business, all thick and just chilling there in the sunlight. The New Zealanders watch the entire battalion wander right in. And then, according to them, the cloud doesn't just hang there, it starts floating up, slow and creepy, like somebody's yanking it on invisible strings. It links up with some other freaky clouds floating above. Then the whole mass drifts away, against the wind, mind you, before poof, gone. The veterans are adamant. Those men weren't killed or carted off as prisoners. They got snatched up, literally taken into the sky. Sounds bonkers, but they even signed statements, which ended up shoved in the archives. Some people roll their eyes and chalk it up to old soldiers losing the plot. Others? They're not so sure. It's easily one of the weirdest war stories ever put to paper. And the mystery just keeps getting weirder. If everyone was supposedly killed or captured, why didn't they find more bodies? Were the Kiwis just confused by the chaos, or did they really see something that defies everything? And if they weren't imagining it, what the hell has the power to scoop up hundreds of guys and erase them just like that? Norfolk vanished. The so-called fog lifted. But the real storm? That was just getting started. By 1920, the fighting was done and dusted, and Gallipoli just sat there, dead quiet. No more gunfire, no frantic yelling, just silence and sunburned hills with weeds choking out what was left of the trenches. Honestly, it was almost peaceful, if you ignored the fact that the ground was basically hiding 1,000 secrets. Unanswered questions, unmarked graves, and those weird stories about a battalion that just vanished into thin air. Gone. Like something out of a ghost story, except real people never came back. So the Imperial War Graves Commission rocked up, notebooks in one hand, shovels in the other, poking around gullies and dirt mounds. They kept track of everything, buttons, scraps of uniforms, bones, trying to piece together who was who, what happened, that sort of thing. But the 1/5 Norfolks, man, that was a mess. All they found were a few scattered remains by some ruined farmhouse near Suvla Bay. A handful of bones, nowhere near enough for the hundreds that were supposed to be missing. It was like the earth had swallowed them up. And the reports from the search teams? Pretty grim. Some of the bodies they did turn up hadn't even been buried, just left out in the open, like someone dumped them and bailed. Others were so badly burned it looked like somebody'd set them on fire on purpose. That old farmhouse? Just a pile of stones and weeds, but you could tell something horrible went down there. No one had a clue what, though. Back home in Norfolk, the whole county felt hollow, haunted by people who should have come back but didn't. Church plaques with endless lists of names, photos clutched at altars, wives waiting for news that never arrived. Rumors spread like wildfire. Some folks said the commanders had sent the men to die for no reason. Others whispered about secret massacres, cover-ups, the government hiding the ugly truth to keep its hands clean. For the families, not knowing was the worst part. No graves, no closure, just this big aching hole. That's when the stories really took off. Around fires and pub tables, folks started saying the men had marched into the mist and disappeared. Literally. The Gallipoli fog got them, people muttered. Some even went full Twilight Zone, talking about the men stepping through to another world. While all this folklore was brewing, the Army just wanted to stick a neat little bow on it. Official reports said the Norfolks overran their objective and got cut off. A couple of lines in a dusty history book. They advanced too far, got wiped out by Ottoman troops. A tidy story about doomed bravery. But let's be real, the math never worked. Where were the bodies? Where were the mass graves? Even the Turkish records didn't mention hundreds of prisoners or dead. None of it added up, and that's probably why people still talk about it. all these years later. Man, the weirdness just kept piling up as the years rolled on. Every so often, you'd hear from old soldiers, guys from totally different regiments, still talking about that damn fog. They'd go on about how it just stuck to the ground, humming with this creepy silence, and how the Norfolks basically marched straight into it and poof, gone. Some folks wrote it off as wartime nerves, memories playing tricks, smoke and noise turning into some boogeyman story. But there were always a few who stood their ground, swearing up and down that what those guys saw was real, and no amount of rational explanations could touch it. Then, in the 30s, the whole thing flared up again for like 5 minutes when a couple of Turkish vets got interviewed. Their take, nope, no massacre, no epic slaughter, nada. Some of them even acted like they'd never even heard of the Norfolks, totally blank. You'd think that would put everyone at ease, but nah, it just made everything weirder. If the enemy didn't even know about it, then where the hell did those men go? England's families definitely weren't buying it. By the 1950s, the story had kind of faded into the background. Just another oddball blip in military history. After everything the world had gone through, bombs, mushroom clouds, a whole new level of nightmare, Gallipoli's mysteries started to look almost quaint. Cute even, if you can call a Vanishing Battalion cute. Still, for a handful of diehards, the Vanishing Battalion was the white whale. They just couldn't let it go. Fast forward to 1967 and boom, some New Zealand veterans dropped their testimonies. Suddenly, everyone's listening again. These guys swore, hand on heart, that they saw the Norfolks get swallowed up by this glowing fog, watched it float upwards like it had a mind of its own. And then, just like that, it drifted away, straight into the sky, against the wind. Pretty wild, right? Their stories lined up too well for comfort. The skeptics rolled their eyes, called it old man's imagination, but the true believers, oh, they ate it up. To them, this wasn't just some battlefield confusion. This was proof. The Norfolks didn't die like everyone else. They got taken. By what? Who knows? So by the time the 60s rolled around, you had two competing stories. Officially, the Norfolks got cut off and wiped out in the Gallipoli mess. Unofficially, they got erased, sucked up by something no history book could ever explain. But here's the one thing that never changed. 267 men marched into battle, and almost none came back. No general could spin it right, no family could accept it, and after all these years, there's still that one question hanging in the air. How did that many men just vanish? Honestly, it's the kind of thing that keeps you up at night. By the time the 60s rolled around, Gallipoli was basically a faded memory, just dusty snapshots and old-timers gathering for a pint and a war story. But that whole mess with the Norfolk Battalion, that one just wouldn't die. Then out of nowhere in 67, these New Zealand vets come forward and drop a bombshell, not in some boring historian study, but smack in the middle of Cold War paranoia and all the weirdo UFO talk flying around. Their story? Buckle up. Apparently, they watched the Norfolk guys wander straight into this super weird glowing fog that seemed to have a mind of its own. Like it actually slithered up from the ground, joined up with a bunch of other clouds, and drifted off, ignoring the wind and common sense, taking the soldiers with it. Sworn statements, all official-like, got shoved into military filing cabinets. But you can't keep a story like that buried. Once folks caught wind, the rumors just wouldn't shut up. Thing is, the late 60s was the golden age of let's see how weird things can get. People were already convinced the government was hiding everything from alien autopsies to secret death rays. So naturally, the Norfolk Battalion's Vanishing Act got a sci-fi makeover. UFO nuts jumped all over it. Luminous fog, classic spooky phenomenon. Maybe the guys weren't wiped out by Ottomans or the terrain. Maybe they got beamed up. Why not? Everything else was on the table. Of course, plenty of people just rolled their eyes. Call it wild imagination, or maybe too many late-night radio shows. But still, the legend stuck. Fringe magazines ran with it. Books started name-dropping the battalion that disappeared into a cloud. Suddenly, the story was everywhere, way past England's borders. Meanwhile, in the dusty backrooms where old files go to die, things got shadier. A few researchers poking around newly released documents noticed how fast the British Army had tried to wrap things up after the war. Reports got fuzzy, official history started sounding suspiciously careful. Hey, what's with all the secrets? Why ignore the eyewitnesses? Conspiracy fans ate it up. Maybe the Norfolk stumbled into some top-secret experiment, a new weapon, freaky gas, or something straight out of mad scientist territory. Would explain why nobody ever found their bodies, right? Just a mess of red tape and questions. Honestly, the Cold War was obsessed with secrets, so this kind of story was like catnip. The theories got even wilder. Some whispered the soldiers were guinea pigs for a weapon way ahead of its time. Others, going full Twilight Zone, claimed they got sucked into a rip in reality. Poof, gone. Sounds nuts, but hey, in a world with nukes, spy satellites, and labs no one talks about, even the wildest ideas started to seem not so crazy. Out in the little Norfolk villages, families just stared at the headlines with tired, hollow eyes. The papers were off, chasing wild theories and tossing around words like mystery and cosmic. For the folks who'd lost someone, though, the only thing spinning was their grief. Their sons, brothers, gone. Names carved into stone, but not a single grave to visit. Maybe the world wanted a puzzle with aliens or secret weather weapons, but for the people left behind, it was just heartbreak. They didn't want more rumors. They wanted someone, anyone, to tell them what the hell actually happened. But the answers? Still missing, as invisible as that weird fog that swallowed the men all those years ago. Then came the 70s and 80s, and the whole story went off on a wild ride. Paranormal experts started poking around, half of them probably just bored or looking for a book deal. Some guy swore he'd found secret officer diaries talking about lights zipping over Gallipoli. Someone else was convinced the fog was just a smokescreen, literally for a cover-up, like the British had buried the whole thing to dodge embarrassment. What used to be a battalion of real, breathing people. Suddenly they were ghost stories. You'd hear about them on scratchy, late-night radio shows, or whispered in the back of some pub. Just another unsolved what-if. But strip away all the wild tales and you're still left with the biggest, ugliest fact. Nobody ever found the bodies. In a war where the dead were counted, sorted, and buried with military neatness, the Norfolk men just vanished. Not a single scrap of evidence to put anyone's mind at rest. That gaping absence, honestly, is creepier than any supernatural theory. By the time the Cold War was winding down, the whole saga had mutated, depending who you asked. Some folks figured it was just another screw-up, a bunch of soldiers lost because command couldn't get its act together. Others, though, thought it was proof of something way weirder, some kind of rip in reality or brush with things man was not meant to know. Through it all, the fog kept turning up, thick and glowing, hanging over Gallipoli like a stage curtain nobody wanted to pull back. And here we are, 100+ years on. The fog still hasn't cleared. Not for the families, not for anyone. By the time Y2K panic was just a memory, Gallipoli wasn't just some old patch of war-torn dirt anymore. It had gone full-on sacred ground status. Seriously, it was like a pilgrimage hotspot. Every year, you'd see folks from the UK, Aussies, Kiwis, all stomping around the same ridges and beaches where their great-granddads probably ate hardtack and tried not to get shot. The place kind of hummed with history, you know? The cliffs, the gullies. They almost felt haunted. And through all the war stories, the medals, the legends, one thing kept nagging. What the heck happened to the Norfolk Battalion? Fast forward to 2001. Bunch of techie archaeologists show up, packing gadgets straight out of CSI. Gallipoli, radar, drones, shiny little tools. Their goal? Finally lay this mystery to rest. Give the families some answers after, nearly 100 years? Easy, right? Find the lost soldiers, dust off some bones, call it a day. Except, nope. These guys go all in, mapping the ground inch by inch, sifting through the dirt. They find stuff, old helmets, busted bayonets, scraps of webbing, the usual war junk. Everything gets tagged, bagged, and cataloged like some high-stakes scavenger hunt. But when they try to find the big prize, the mass grave everyone expected, nada. Not a bone, not a tooth, just a whole lot of nothing. I mean, that's weird, isn't it? Everywhere else in Gallipoli, the earth coughs up stories, buttons, badges, even the occasional skull. But where the Norfolks vanished? Zilch. Like somebody wiped the slate clean. Cue the historians losing their minds. Some reckon the Norfolks got blasted to bits, spread out so far by shellfire, you'd need a microscope to find them. Others bring up grisly tales, charred bodies in a farmhouse, maybe a last stand gone ugly. But the math doesn't add up. 267 blokes don't just poof into thin air. So people start digging through old testimonies again, especially those from New Zealand vets who swore they saw something bizarre. Their stories, pulled from dusty archives, get picked apart and put under a microscope. A lot of folks just shrug and say, probably just smoke from the guns. But the diehards aren't buying it. The fog the Kiwis described, it didn't drift like normal smoke. It kind of slithered, rose up, and then, bam, so did the men. Gone. Naturally, this turns into a whole cottage industry of documentaries, think pieces, conference debates. You get scientists piping up about marsh gas, freaky weather, some kind of volcanic haze. Psychologists start muttering about stress hallucinations, mass panic, that sort of thing. Yet, every theory hits a wall. The bones are missing. The mystery's still alive. And honestly, nobody has a clue. All these years later, the families, now a whole mess of grandkids and great-grandkids, just kind of waited. You could see it on their faces. It wasn't about ghost stories or weird weather anymore. It was about names with no graves, just empty spaces on memorials. Every time they heard those names rattled off at a service, you could feel the weight in the air. Closure? Yeah, right. That ship sailed ages ago. Meanwhile, the legend only got weirder. Once the internet got hold of it, forget about it. Forums, podcasts, those late-night history nuts on YouTube, everyone had a theory. Some folks insisted it was just one of those unsolved war stories history spits out now and then. Others, well, dimensional portals, aliens, government cover-ups, pick your flavor of crazy. Jump to 2015, the big Gallipoli Centenary Bash. Delegations from everywhere showed up at Suvla Bay, laid wreaths, made speeches, did the whole respectful remembrance thing. They read out the lost battalion's names, and then, bam, just this thick, heavy silence. You couldn't ignore it. 100 years gone, and still, not a trace, lost for real, not just on paper. Archaeologists? Oh, they're still out there, bless them. Digging, poking, flying drones, analyzing dirt. Gallipoli's ground just isn't giving up the goods. The harder they look, the more obvious it is. Something's missing, and it's not coming back. 267 men, poof, gone. No tech, no amount of sweat, nothing's cracking the case. At this point, it's more than history. It's about the stuff we just can't wrap our heads around. How do people disappear like that? Fog eating a whole battalion? Cover-up? Massacre? Or something completely off the rails? Who the hell knows? So yeah, the story keeps rolling. Every new dig, every new breakthrough just piles on more questions. The fog, it's not on the battlefield anymore. It's in people's minds. And the Norfolk Battalion? Still as missing as the day they walked into the mist. Just a little more legendary now. Gallipoli now. Man, it's almost peaceful, like the place forgot it was ever hell on earth. Waves splash up lazy on those beaches where once the water ran red. Wind's just doing its thing, whipping over ridges that used to shake with explosions. Cemeteries dot the ground, white stones lined up like little soldiers. Only some of those names, no one underneath. The Norfolk boys especially. Just stones for ghosts. Gives you chills. You get tourists, history buffs, grandkids of guys who fought there, all wandering those old paths. Guides spin tales about guts and glory, about doomed attacks and heroes with nowhere to run. Typical wartime stuff. But bring up the Vanishing Battalion and whoa, voices drop. People act like the shadows are listening. It's less history lesson, more campfire story. Something you lean in to hear, just in case. Officially, the story's boring. Battalion advanced too far, cut off, wiped out. Tragedy sure, but tidy. Problem is that explanation doesn't cut it. Hundreds of men don't just go poof. Battles leave messes, bodies, gear, something. Here, nothing. Just a question mark. Scholars still bicker. Some say the mysterious fog was just smoke and chaos, that the men got gunned down and lost in the mess. Others point to burnt-up bodies at some farmhouse, maybe a massacre, buried to dodge a scandal. Then you got folks who believe those World New Zealand witness accounts. A weird fun, men marching in, never coming out. Like actual vanishing act. Too neat to be real. Too weird not to wonder. And of course, Cold War years brought out all the crackpots. Secret weapons, portals to another dimension, you name it. Now with the internet, the whole thing's got a second wind. Documentaries, Reddit threads, YouTube rabbit holes, late-night pub arguments. UFO nuts claim it was aliens' first big score. Skeptics just roll their eyes and call it a textbook case of legend-making after disaster. Somewhere in that mess sits a mystery that just refuses to die. Over 100 years, and people still can't let it go. Can't blame them, honestly. But beyond the theories, one truth remains. Families in Norfolk lost their sons, their brothers, their fathers, with no graves to mourn at. For them, the story is not about seeing or aliens or conspiracies. It is about men who marched into war and never came home. The legend may grow, the speculation may twist, but at its heart lies human absence. Rows of names without bodies. On quiet evenings at Suvla Bay, as the sun sinks behind the ridges, the land still carries an unease. Locals speak of sudden mists that roll across the gullies, heavy and low, even when the sky above is clear. Some say the battlefield remembers that the fog comes not from the sea, but from the ground itself, rising to reclaim what it once swallowed. And perhaps that is why the story endures. Not because of what we know, but because of what we cannot explain. The Norfolk men marched forward into fog and were never seen again. Whether they were cut down, consumed by fire, taken prisoner, or carried into some realm beyond comprehension, history cannot say. What remains is the silence of the battlefield when the fog lifted, the silence in the archives where answers should be, the silence of the families who waited for letters that never came. 100 years have passed, yet the question echoes still. How can hundreds of men vanish into thin air? Some mysteries fade with time. This one does not. It lingers, heavy as the fog itself, rolling across the fields of Gallipoli. A reminder that even in war, where death is certain, disappearance can be more terrifying than death. And perhaps, on certain days, when the mist curls across the ridges and the gullies of Suvla Bay, you might imagine you hear boots on the march, voices muffled in the haze, the echo of a battalion still advancing, forever swallowed by the fog that never lifted.